Now, having emphasized trust so much, can you see the folk in the audience there worrying about what he was doing to the Sabbath and the law? Like the questions you raised appropriately there in the 14th chapter. So at the end of chapter 3, Paul has to say, by my emphasis on trust, am I overthrowing the law? I suspect some of you think so. By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. Now what about that? By putting it in its proper perspective. Next question. What is the proper perspective? How does trusting God in the right way lead one to thank God for his law? And that's Galatians for 2 times from now. Paul says, why then the law? It was added because of transgression, because we needed it to protect us and guard us, keep us from destroying ourselves until we obeyed God for the right reason. Is it all right if your children will not brush their teeth for the right reason, send them upstairs to brush them just because you've said so? You might keep their teeth until the day when they'll brush them for the right reason. And that kind of illustration, by the way, is very biblical. Jesus liked to use those. In my own experience, I remember the pressure to brush my teeth. For Mother had a ritual at night. She'd come by our beds and ask certain questions. Did you wash your neck behind your ears? Did you say your prayers? Did you read your lesson? And did you brush your teeth? Well, in those days, I understood that the consequence of saying no to any one of those was that Mother was not pleased and you might have to do something. And if you persisted in saying no, there would be serious consequences. And if you persisted in not brushing your teeth, you might say, I'm going to discuss this with your father. And my father being a very vigorous man, that was not a pleasant consequence. And so I would be inclined to brush my teeth because the consequence of not brushing your teeth is you know what? Is that the best reason for brushing your teeth? Because you see, my father and my mother have long been dead. But I brush my teeth because I wish I'd brushed them better. There is a consequence for not looking after your teeth. But now does that mean that I really lived under a burdensome legal situation there? And my parents should not have done that to me. Quite on the contrary, I have thought more than once that if tonight, when I get into bed, my mother could come by and say, did you wash your neck? Did you say your prayers? Did you study your lesson? And did you brush your teeth? I'd love it. It made sense as time went on to do that thing and form these habits, and the habit of saying your prayers, to have that. You start out for the wrong reason, but you might develop a habit and then have a much better reason later on. Does this then make light of law? No, we thank God for his law. And in Galatians, we can really go into that as Paul does. See, Paul knew he had to explain that to the audience. How about in Romans? Does he say we're not under the law but under grace? Shall we sin, therefore, because now we know how gracious God is? God forbid, now we have a better reason for doing what the law required. We're not under law in our relationship with God. We deal with a very gracious God. Christ is the end of law. What do you do with that one? In 10:4. Christ is the end of the law, that everyone who has faith may be justified. What can one say briefly about that? I think the only safe way to handle verses like that is to be reading all of Romans in the light of the other 66, 65, and put that in proper perspective. How do you like Phillips' translation of that? Christ is the end of the struggle for righteousness by works of law, that everyone who has faith may be put right with God or justified. Has the law ever saved anybody? No, you see, the law by itself just tells you what to do. And you remember in the chapter on the struggle, Paul says, when I read the 10 more and more carefully, and I came to that 10th one, and it said I not only should not sin, I should not even want to. He said, that made me angry. I'd been good all these years, and a man of strong feeling. I had often wanted to do what was wrong, and I measured my virtue by the fact that though I wanted to do what was wrong so much, I didn't do it. Now there's a real saint. And Paul says, I realize now that full salvation means that eventually I will even lose the desire to do what is wrong. That's real healing. efficacy. I'm not earning brownie points by being good. I want to be healed, that's all. What must I do to be saved? In Acts, trust God. And God says, I will not just admit you to the kingdom, but I will heal and restore you, all the damage done. And you remember the argument in that chapter where Paul finally realizes the law did him a service in revealing that inside himself, though he appeared to be good, that evil was still in there. He says, I still want to do that thing. I've disciplined myself and I haven't done it. I would really like to be delivered from this doomed body. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. The good news has power to save and to heal. And in heaven, is it not right? We will live with neighbors who not only do not hurt, they don't even want to. You don't have to lock your house because everybody will obey the law those days. They wouldn't dare disobey in heaven. No, there won't even need to be the law on the wall. Nobody even wants to steal. The law is written in the heart. That's the whole meaning of the law being written in the heart instead of on the wall. We've come to the place where the 10th commandment has been obeyed. We do not even want to do what is wrong. And God offers that healing.